So I would like to wish good evening to everyone who's watching online, and to let them know that our last application for Oak Hill, Marshborough Road, Woodensborough has been withdrawn. I would also like to provide committee with an announcement in case they've missed it. Planning gets a very narrow media focus, but one of the things that I was particularly delighted to was that 27,000 professionals in the Royal Town Planning Institute have given the South East Award for Planning Excellence 2026 to Dover District Council, and I'm sure you'll be like me, eager and excited about the result on the 3rd of December to see whether we can get a national award. And that's just one of the 3 awards that the District Council has made, and I'm delighted for the hard work that I know planning officers undertake, and I think it's also a reflection of how I value the committee and its expertise. So I just wanted to rephrase that. So can we go to agenda item? I have been appropriately advised that the Woodensborough has been withdrawn from the agenda. It's not been utterly withdrawn. So if we can go to agenda item 1, apologies, please.
Yes, Chairman, I've received apologies from Councillor Helen Williams.
Thank you, and we go to the appointment of substitute members, please.
Councillor Susan Hill is subbing for Councillor Williams, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hill, that's appreciated. And do we have declarations of interest, please? We don't. Super. So we go to our next item, which is the application Dover, which is the minutes. Are the minutes acceptable, please? Thank you, Councillor Back and Councillor Nee. Do we have a NEMCON vote? Thank you for the raising of the arm. We can now go to the application 22/01701, 01702, which is High Street and Middle Street deal. And if I could hand over to our planning officer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So these applications for full and listed building consent for the first and second floor extensions, external and internal alterations to facilitate the conversion of the existing retail unit and ancillary storage space to 5 retail units and 17 residential flats were previously resolved to be granted at July 2023's Planning Committee. As set out in the report, the Section 106 agreement was never agreed or signed due to viability concerns, and the decisions were never issued. These applications are now supported by up-to-date viability evidence to demonstrate that the scheme cannot support on or off-site affordable housing. In addition to this, the scheme has been subject to some minor external and internal alterations, which are detailed in the report. The proposal has also been considered against the up-to-date local plan and NPPF, as it was previously considered under the former core strategy and an older version of the NPPF. To advise the committee for clarity, the updated submission has been assessed against the following list of local plan policies, which have replaced the former core strategy policies. These are policies SP1, SP2, SP3, SP4, SP5, SP9, SP11, SP12, SP14, SP15, CC4, CC5, CC6, CC8, PM1, PM2, PM3, R1, TI1, TI3, NE1, NE3, HE1, HE2. These policies have been considered in the assessment of the proposal and do not change the conclusions in the report. The proposed revised scheme does not alter the number of retail or commercial units or the residential flats originally proposed, with minor external and internal alterations. So just going to show you some site plans. So this is the site block plan and the proposed roof plan. As you can see, one of the external changes proposed is the installation of solar panels to the roof of the building. The building is these solar panels are going to be installed on flat roofs, and because of the height of the building and the surrounding built environment, they will have little to no public visibility. And these are the elevation plans showing the current proposed elevations and the former proposed elevations. Essentially, the external alterations relate to some alterations to windows. That includes the reinstatement of current bricked up windows to their original proportions, provision of a more cohesive arrangement of windows, and also alterations to the shop front, which in our view actually improves the design and form of the shop fronts proposed. And as you can see here, again, the external changes are considered to be acceptable in terms of the heritage assets and the character and appearance of the area. The internal changes comprise limited layout changes which do not compromise the resolved to be approved internal layout of the listed building. The proposed minor internal and external changes are not considered to be harmful to the residential amenities of adjacent neighbours and future occupants, and the scheme satisfactorily addresses the requirements of policy PM2 in respect of space standards, M42 standards and water efficiency. As detailed, the revised scheme is supported by an up-to-date viability assessment, which has been subject to an independent viability review. This demonstrates that the scheme cannot support affordable housing. The proposal has been assessed against the policies of the 2024 Dover Local Plan and is considered to be compatible with these policies. Up-to-date infrastructure and developer contributions have been applied through the relevant policies, which have been agreed with the applicant and shall be secured through the legal agreement. The proposal is therefore considered to be acceptable, subject to relevant safeguarding conditions and the Section 106 obligations which will be secured, and as such the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't have any public speakers, so I'll go first to Councillor Back.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as we've already granted permission in 2023, but this time round we are getting no affordable housing. But if the developer had signed off the S106 in 2023, we would have got 30% affordable housing back in 23. But a viability study has been carried out and has approved that the application cannot support affordable housing. So we are where we are. So as the application was okay in 23, I move to grant permission.
Thank you, Councillor Nee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second the motion. I think if it's not viable because they couldn't sign the 106, it wasn't viable when it came before us. I think it's highly cynical of the developer to do this. I think we would have considered it fairly at the time because it is a difficult building. It will be very expensive to convert. So I'm happy to second. The principle's established. There's nothing extra to discuss, just to say that I'm very disappointed that a developer is so cynical.
I would echo that. We have a proposal then. I'm sorry, Councillor Knight. I didn't see your hand until directed.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I don't want to dwell on this one too long, but first of all, I think everybody knows where I come from on brownfield sites and regeneration of old buildings and knocking them down. So I think it's actually great that we are looking at a building like this and actually turn it into something good. A couple of questions though. The Deal Town Council just pulled up evidence on soundproofing and stuff like that. One assumes that's actually been addressed within the application. And I just wanted a bit of clarification on what has been agreed as contributions, because you kindly, throughout the calculations here, added everything up. But the last one, strategic highways tariff, we've got 17 times 2001, which is 35,700. I'm assuming I'm correct in that calculation. That is 2,100 times 17 units.
That would be correct, yes.
Okay, so that takes us to a total contribution, including the education side of it, of around about £120,000. So there's a considerable contribution being made anyway. And in light of the agreement that it's not viable, I totally agree as well. Thank you.
Just to go back on the sound insulation, that is being secured by a condition, and that sufficient sound insulation should be provided between the commercial units and the residential flats above.
Sorry, the fire escape as well.
And the fire escape, I don't have any specific details on that, but that will obviously be subject to the relevant building control regulations, and it will have to adhere to that.
Thank you. I think we now have a proposal before us.
Yes, Chairman. There is a motion to approve the planning application and listed building consent application, and that has been seconded. For clarification, if you wish to approve the applications, you should vote for the motion. If you do not wish to approve the applications, you should vote against the motion or abstain. Can you cast your votes, and can I ask Gemma to start the electronic vote? We have 10 votes in favour, so that motion has been carried and the applications have been approved.
Thank you very much. We come now to agenda item 6, which is the application land east of the Sports Pavilion in St George's Road, Sandwich, 25/01382. And I'll hand over to our planning officer for the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. So the application is for the erection of 2 detached dwellings with associated landscaping. Both are considered to be self-build. The site location plan showing and the proposed block plan showing its location to the east of the existing sports pavilion, which is here. And there are other dwellings which are located to the rear of the existing houses which front onto St George's Road, so they can be seen here. The site is currently not in use, but it was previously used as a horse paddock, and there is an existing stable which is located in the northwest corner, which can be seen on the site location plan here. The proposed elevations, the front, the rear, and the side elevations. The image on the left shows the view looking towards the rear of the houses, which front onto St George's Road, and the existing stables in the corner of the site. The image on the right shows the view looking northeast, where you can see the existing houses, which are located behind the houses that are fronting onto St George's Road that I just mentioned. This image shows the view looking southeast to the countryside beyond the site. You can see that it has an existing dense tree line. And the right image shows the view looking southwest, which looks towards the sports pavilion. These images show the existing access onto the site, including the existing dropped curb. The application for 2 dwellings in this location is considered to be acceptable in principle. They would sit comfortably within the context of the site with no harm to visual amenity and would cause no unacceptable harm to residential amenity. It is therefore recommended for approval subject to the completion of a unilateral undertaking to secure the self-build element and subject to safeguarding conditions. Since the publication of the report, there have been some further representations received. However, the majority of these comments are covered within the report. In addition, comments raised concerns regarding the removal of an existing boundary, a neighbouring boundary hedge. This is considered to be a civil matter and in any case would not change the outcome of the decision this evening. Further to this, comments suggest that consent would not be given for the boundary treatments, and again this is considered to be more of a civil matter and would also not change the outcome of the decision. Further to this, concern was raised regarding a potential increase in crime due to the removal of the existing gates to accommodate the proposed development. In this case, as the site would be developed with 2 residential properties, this is not considered to result in any increased crime compared to the proposed use. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have speakers objecting, and could I ask Councillor Friend to come forward, please?
Thank you, Chair, members. First, policy SP4 is not a blanket permission for housing adjoining a settlement boundary. All its criteria should be met. B and D require successful integration with the settlement, conservation of landscape character, and no harmful intrusion into open countryside. Paragraph 3.71 points 2 and 3 is especially relevant. It requires the built form to be physically and visually related to the settlement. It specifically identifies schemes where an access road adjoins a boundary, but the proposed buildings are not well related to that boundary or the existing built form. Most of the site is countryside paddock behind the established St George's Road frontage. 2 substantial 5-bedroom houses, garages, parking and permanent domestic activity would be reached through a long, narrow access. Tree screening may reduce views, but it does not integrate the development with the settlement. I therefore consider the proposal conflicts with policies SP4, PM1, NE2 and NPPF paragraphs 135 and 187. Second, the emergency access remains unresolved. The access is already acknowledged in the report as constrained and not ideal. It falls below the normally recommended 3-metre width and narrows to approximately 2.15 metres at its tightest point. Against that constraint, Kent Fire and Rescue Service states that hose lay distances are approximately 25% above the available 90-metre threshold and remain non-compliant irrespective of the proposed suppression mitigation. I'm not asking members to determine building regulations. I'm asking whether the fixed planning layout is acceptable. NPPF paragraph 115B requires safe and suitable access for all users, while paragraph 117D requires access by service and emergency vehicles. On the specialist evidence before you, that has not been demonstrated. Third, the report confirms archaeological potential, yet no assessment has been submitted. It requires an appropriate desk-based assessment where there is or may be an archaeological heritage asset. NPPF paragraph 207 does the same. A condition triggered only after the remains are found does not provide the evidence needed before permission is granted. Finally, policy H5 to support self-build only, subject to compliance with other local plan policies. Self-build status cannot override these conflicts, and I respectfully urge you to refuse this planning permission. Thank you.
Could Mr. Bradley Allen come forward, please, stating the reasons for his objection? Thank you.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak. The question before you today is not whether this development could become acceptable in the future, it is whether the application demonstrates compliance with the development plan today. I do not believe that it does. My concern is not based on one issue alone. Kent Fire and Rescue continues to advise that the proposed access and hose lay distance remain outside their stated tolerance. Southern Water considers the drainage information insufficient and will require further details. Archaeology and construction impacts are left to planning conditions. The access itself remains below the normally recommended standard, yet approval is still recommended. Taken individually, each of those matters may be capable of resolution. Taken together, they leave real doubt that this application has demonstrated it is acceptable at this stage. The proposed fence illustrates this concern. However, our existing boundary fence is private property. It stands on our land, it is not part of this application and will remain in place. The applicant would need to propose a second fence on their side of the boundary. Has Kent County Council Highways assessed the actual usable width once both fences are in place? The report does not make that clear, even though the access is already acknowledged to be below the normally recommended standard. The proposed fence would also sit less than 2 metres from the principal ground floor window serving our kitchen, living room and an elderly resident's bedroom. Whatever screening it provides, it would not prevent headlights, noise or the repeated daily disturbance of vehicles passing so close to those rooms. If one of the report's key mitigation measures raises questions, it is reasonable to ask whether the same level of scrutiny is being applied elsewhere. Too many important matters are still being left to planning conditions or further approvals. Conditions can deal with detail, they should not be relied upon to resolve whether a development is acceptable in principle. Planning policies and standards exist for a reason and should be applied consistently. Before you vote, I ask you to consider one simple question. Has the applicant demonstrated through the evidence before you today that this application as submitted complies with the development plan? If you are not satisfied that it has, I respectfully ask that you refuse the application or defer it until the outstanding matters have been properly addressed. Thank you all.
We've had 2 speakers objecting at 3 minutes each, and I asked Mr. Tim Ingleton to come forward to speak in support of the proposal, and he has 6 minutes.
Chairman, members of the committee, good evening. By way of background, I am speaking in a personal and private capacity on behalf of the applicants. It is often the case that applications on your agenda give rise to a plethora of representations with or without merit. This is understandable as change often brings discomfort. The challenge, therefore, for both applicants and the planning authority is to prepare and consider proposals that are both robust and policy compliant if they are to be approved. In this case, the proposals were prepared through a prior detailed design and pre-application process undertaken by the Principal Planning Officer. The advice given was taken on board and duly supplemented by additional pre-application dialogue with both Kent Highways and Kent Fire and Rescue Service, among others. No overriding objections were raised at any point in this process. By way of clarification, I will now revert to a number of specific points. This is not a speculative application. The landowner as applicant, coming from a family of lengthy public service, wishes to re-establish a family home in Sandwich, as does his fellow applicant. Both applicants have been heavily involved in the design process to meet their individual needs and wish to undertake a self-build process. To this end, both are content to complete a unilateral undertaking to provide assurance on what is clearly a windfall site. This is particularly relevant as inspection of the Council's annual monitoring report highlights that Sandwich has the lowest total of housing completions across the district. None of the allocated sites have commenced and only 3 windfall completions have been listed. Across the district, there are 37 extant permissions for self-build with only 3 under construction. Approval of the application tonight will help address these figures at a Sandwich level. The second issue that I wish to mention concerns the highway issues arising from the application if permitted. Locationally, the site is in an excellent position. It is in close proximity to Sandwich Station and also the National Cycle Route along Sandown Road, together with easy walking distance to Sandwich Town Centre and public transport. This is reinforced by reference to the appeal decision for the nearby allocated site for 35 units at Archers Low. The established access track to the site is single vehicle width, connected to St George's Road via a properly constructed highway drop crossover. Kent Highways has indicated that it can accommodate the development. In this respect, inspection of the transport assessments that have been through due process for your approved allocated sites provide helpful background data. The conclusion is that the application is likely to result in one movement during the AM and PM peaks, although I believe this could possibly be reduced through modal shift due to the sustainable location of the site. It should also be noted that the application provides compliant parking and on-site turning arrangements which are not found in a significant number of properties elsewhere in St George's Road. This results in sporadic on-street parking that from observation acts as informal traffic calming. Despite there being some 50 driveways on St George's Road, there has been no recorded personal injury accidents in the last 3 years. This indicates to me, Chairman, that the high burden of proof required by paragraphs 115 and 116 of the MPPF required to justify a highway refusal cannot be met. The application will result in negligible additional traffic and there are no unacceptable safety risks or cumulative impacts, a point recognised by the Highway Authority as has been the case with other similar recent applications. Insofar as the use of the access track itself is concerned, improvements are proposed to the surface and boundary treatment. One of the adjacent occupants originally acknowledged that a fence would be erected on the boundary in place of the current wire fence. Rather than erecting the maximum permitted height of 2 metres, it is proposed to erect a fence of 1.5 metres to lessen the impact. The track will be resurfaced with permeable paving in such a way to minimise noise and drainage impact. While it is now suggested that a fence be erected inside the post and wire fence, and that may restrict the access at the very narrowest point. This is no different to a vehicle accessing a garage doorway, which of course anyone in this room who drives should be able to negotiate. Such use of the private access being remote from the public highway does not constitute a severe highway hazard. The next matter I wish to highlight concerns the response from Kent Fire and Rescue. While the width of the access restricts the direct attendance of a fire appliance, fire protection will be provided at a level that probably exceeds that found elsewhere in St George's Road. According to Kent Fire and Rescue, fire protection would ultimately fall to be determined through a full plan submission to building control in the event that planning permission is granted, a point that has been consistent DDC approach, as recently mentioned, I believe, by Councillor Kenton. The applicant's fire consultant will be engaging further on this in due course. Lastly, inspection of the planning portal clearly demonstrates the degree of detail undertaken and provided in support of the application. This includes a substantial number of reports and design information which has underpinned the design of the development before you this evening, and is supported by your professionals involved with planning across the various disciplines. In conclusion, the applicants welcome the thorough, well-constructed report undertaken by the case officer. This clearly demonstrates that planning interests of acknowledged importance have been dealt with.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is now before the committee. I'm going to go to Councillor Nee, then Councillor Back, then Councillor Beanie.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm neutral on the principle of the development. I'm interested to know what my fellow councillors say on it. The access is clearly an issue, but the fact there's a dropped curb, if you read the KCC comments carefully, you'll see that it's a reluctant agreement. It's not an open agreement. The land ownership boundaries are a civil matter, and it's for the owners of the properties and the applicant to resolve. What I've got a major stumbling block with is the Kent Fire and Rescue comment. And there's two things here that I'd like to get some advice from our planning officers on. The first being that ever since I've been on this committee, I've been told that a statutory consultee's opinion is sacrosanct. And where we've tried to go against the statutory consultee, usually KCC, and we had a very recent example at Wingham, and we were told and we were warned by legal teams that if it goes to appeal, we're going to fall against it. Yeah, in this report, we've got a very clear direction from Kent Fire and Rescue. These buildings are outside of the hose distance for a property with fire suppression. Now, it doesn't matter what you put in, sprinklers, put in misting systems, they're there to suppress a fire. They're not there to guarantee extinguishing a fire. And that is why Kent Fire and Rescue need the assurance of being able to get to that property. There is an answer, and that is for the applicants to construct a fire hydrant, which all major developers end up doing on new sites to make sure that they can meet the requirement. It might be very difficult in terms of the finances to meet this. So when I look at the report and I see a very clear direction from Kent Fire and Rescue, which I'm minded to follow, and I see that somehow building regs will sort it out. So if you go to section B5 in building regs, table 15.2 requirements is just a plan with drawings showing that they've got to be within the distance. So I can't see how it is going to resolve this matter. This is a clear problem for this application, and I would have expected, with the Kent Fire and Rescue comment, for the applicant to come to us with the answer. And with the answer, then I could look at the rest of the comments. So at the moment, because of the Fire and Rescue comments, because I'm following advice that's been given to me every single meeting I've attended to attend to and understand and accept the consultation, the statutory consultee comments, I'm minded to not accept the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nee. Just on your point about the statutory consultee, they're not a statutory consultee. We do choose whether we want to consult them or not. I think in this case it is because of the length of the access, just to get their comments on that. Overall, it is a building regs requirement. It's not something that we usually do comment on in most of our applications. We just need to be satisfied that there is a potential prospect for the development to be built out eventually. In this case, there are some possibilities of an answer, such as dry risers, where they can put a pipe underneath the land, and then they would connect the hose at either end, and then they'd be able to put the fire out. They could also put the fire hydrant on the site, as you said as well. But as I said, this is a matter that's dealt with by building regs. As you pointed out as well, the sprinkler system is not necessarily to put the fire out, it's to be able to suppress the fire to give them more time to deal with the fire. In this case, they do increase the length from the fire appliance to the fire from 45 metres to 90 metres, and in this case it's very slight, but it does exceed this. That doesn't mean that they can't necessarily reach all parts to put out the fire. It's more so that they can physically reach the corners of the room and things like that. But yeah, because there is a potential that there is a prospect for them to overcome this issue, we've considered that to be acceptable in this case. Thank you.
Councillor Nee, do you want to come back on that?
No, I've just been told, except for the statutory piece, exactly what I knew. Thank you.
Councillor Back.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions and a few statements. One of my questions is to do with what Councillor Nee's just mentioned. First question, foul sewage disposal would be via mains, I believe. Second question, I understand that a pipe from St George's Road to the properties is going to be installed so that the fire operatives can connect both ends. This was mentioned at Chairman's briefing, meaning that the appliances don't have to try and drive up the access road. Also, I understand that a high closed board fence will be erected between the access road and the closest neighbour. Also, that was mentioned at Chairman's briefing. If you want to answer those first, and then I'll go on to my statements after.
Yes, thank you. So they've detailed in the application form that foul sewage would be disposed of by the main sewers. There is also a condition requesting further details on this because that was requested by Southern Water. The issue of the pipe and the dry riser is more of a potential option. It's not been that's not been submitted to us. It's just an example of a way that it may be overcome, but that's not been confirmed. And your point about the fence, do you want clarification on the impact of the neighbours on that point, or?
I think I just wanted clarification whether it is or isn't going to be erected, and if it's not, can we put a condition to say that it should be?
Yes, we've suggested a condition that it is, and that we were also going to detail that that would be put in place prior to the houses being occupied as well.
Okay. PCC have no objections. Environmental health, no objections. Because the plot is quite large, there will be no significant overlooking. 2.31 of the report, KCC highways state that Range Rovers could access and exit with mirrors out. 2.53 of the report, fire safety matter, subject to review under BB5 Building Regs 2010. This site already accommodates vehicle movements to and from the site.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Beanie.
Thank you, Chair. Can we get the access photo back up, please, again? Okay. So obviously in the conditions it says erection of boundary fence. Are we just talking about the boundary fence to our right hand side now? Are we all obviously?
Yes, it would be a boundary fence along this side.
Along that side there. Okay. That's just, I just wanted to see that in my head again for a minute, Chair, please. Thank you.
Councillor Cromwell.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. With this access road, I have a bit of concern about getting diggers and lorries up there for building the actual site, because it's not very big and everything. You get to get a digger up there through there, so the work to carry out. What is the actual distance between the two fence boundaries on the site before the fence is put up? Or is that going to be so the diggers and lorries can get up there, because they've got a lot of stuff? If the fire brigade can't get up there, I'm sure the digger won't be able to get up there. Can we have that, please, Chairman?
Yeah, so the access does start off with a width of 3.45 metres, which is the width down nearer the highway down here. This goes down to 2.8 at one point, then it goes down to 2.5. That's for a further approximately 20 metres. It goes down to 2.5, and at the narrowest point, it goes down to 2.3 metres, but then it widens after that back up to 3 metres.
Possibly to get a digger down there on the narrow part, you're going to be very touching it to take it off the trailer and run it up there, and with the trailer on the lorry was scaffolding as well, because the lorry is roughly about 2.5 to 3 metres wide.
Yes, thank you. That's not a material planning consideration in this case, but we do consider that there are ways around that.
Yes, Councillor Cronk, and then I'm going to Councillor Kenton, and then
So
returning to
if we get no vehicles up there at all, big vehicles, are they going to unload everything on the road and then take it up afterwards? Because that's going to cause a traffic problem.
Yes, we could add on a construction management plan if that would aid that.
Thank you, Councillor Kenton.
Thank you, Chairman. Like a lot of people, we're struggling with this one. It's not so much the principle of the development, as Councillor Nee said, you know, it does fit our policies. It all comes down to this access road, and we want Kent Highways being a little ambivalent about it, but hardly saying no. But the interesting thing is, I mean, and Councillor Back was saying, wasn't it, you can get a Range Rover up there, but if you read the report, you can get a Range Rover up there if you fold all the mirrors in. And it's not, which is just think that is incredibly tight. And in the dim distant past, not recently, so I don't have to go into this, I had delivered hay to this property when they had paddocks out the back, and I could never get my Land Rover and trailer up there. So we had to roll them out the front there because we could never get up there. And you're just thinking, how is this going to be, how is it acceptable, I suppose, the issue, when you think if you're going to get a home delivery of groceries, I mean, a transit is 2.2 odd meters without the wing mirrors, isn't it? So you couldn't even get a home delivery without folding your wing mirrors in. And I just find it interesting that highways haven't come out with a blanket now. They've sort of a warm, lukewarm yes. And it's just the practicalities of that. It may fit principle, but it doesn't really fit, I suppose, the goodwill of the legislation, really, because that is a narrow access. And they say it's in use now, but you can see there's no vehicle tracks up there because I don't have anybody can get up there. So it's not, you know, you may have an historic use and therefore by right, but it's sort of creeping over the line rather than leaping there, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kenton. Councillor Beanie.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to touch base on, because obviously, as we know, the development could go ahead. The developer could unload everything in the road and all that sort of stuff. So I just want to touch base a little bit more with yourself. Obviously, once this goes, whichever way we go with this evening, so if the construction management plan comes forward and the developer's obviously putting that in the road, he's got no option but to obviously unload materials in the road or in the trackway, and obviously there's going to be to and fro with forklifts and all that sort of stuff to get the stuff up there. You would build it. You would be able to build this development. It's just would be very difficult. How would that feel as yourself, obviously as an officer, are you happy with that as because that is the only option in the construction management plan? Obviously they've got is pretty much everything to be unloaded in the road, forklifts to be going out, turning around in the end of that road and coming back in. And so how would you feel about that? So that's my first question, please, Chair.
Telehandler up there.
Yeah, you would. Small one.
Dinky one. Yeah.
Yes, I'm saying, but it's
Yeah.
everything. It's all.
You can get mine up there.
Councillor Beanie, you're asking our officer about that as a material consideration, are you?
Obviously, this is by stuff being unloaded in the road, causing disturbance at the edge of the road and all that sort of stuff. So if that comes in if that's the only way it's going to happen. So what is the officer's views? Obviously, she's given it some thought, but obviously, the construction management plan has got to be passed before the development can happen. So are they happy to pass the construction development plan with that in place? I suppose that's what I'm asking to clarify, please.
Thank you. The construction management plan would give us an element of control, but overall, obviously, there are some things that would be out of our control and would have to take place for the development. Yeah, it's still not a material consideration. Are you referring to in terms of highway safety with those vehicles still coming up and down the track?
There's a reason why I'm saying that again, Chair, and obviously to the planners, is obviously because for that to be practical and to be built, obviously the developer's going to probably have to put in potentially some sort of permission to KCC to use areas outside for that period of time while it's being developed and all that sort of stuff. So it's all right us saying, oh yeah, we've got a management plan, but obviously it's going to be quite a strenuous management plan, and are the officers going to be happy with that?
I fully appreciate the pertinence of what you're saying, Councillor Beanie, which is why we're considering it very carefully.
I think what officers are trying to say is we're advising the planning committee that it's not a material planning consideration, but this is an opportunity to potentially have an element of control. And as you say, there could be situations where KCC need to be arrangements with KCC if they know they're going to have particular deliveries that requires closures of the road for certain periods of time. But that obviously is outside of our domain. But well, and also in assessing a CMP, we don't necessarily have all the expertise, but it will, as the case officer said, allow us to exert some control, even though, as I've said, it's not really, as we've advised, it's not particularly material. But I think it can go some way to addressing the situation or the concerns of the planning committee.
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Back?
Not on that, just on another point now, Chair, because obviously as you know, it's my trade. I can appreciate that development could be built. It's going to be difficult, but it could be built. My next question would be, obviously, that scheme could potentially run with no parking at all, probably, couldn't it? Just with literally bicycle access, due to the fact that we're in a sustainable area, close to a school, in the town-ish. So obviously, I'm just trying to, so potentially that the applicant could come before us again and park his cars on the road. And then we would be looking at it would be a different application, but we would also be looking, probably mindful to pass that, wouldn't we, because of the area and SP4?
I'd like to leave that question hanging, Councillor Beanie, if I may, because I know Councillor Knight, Councillor Back and Councillor Woodgate want to say something. So I'd like to go to Councillor Knight and maybe come back to that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's strange. We're all sitting here trying to find a way of saying no to this application by the sounds of it. But material consideration. I'm looking at it, and I'm not sure where to lead this question. But everybody's talking about access, etc. I'm looking at that picture there on the right-hand side and thinking about the access and the road running between two houses and running very, very close to two houses. And normally you would like to see a path or something like that runs alongside a road, either side perhaps. So I was wondering if you've got people living in these houses and enjoying their gardens, etc. We're ploughing a road through there. I know it's only two houses, but there's going to be movements. Is there any rules that we should be aware of the layout and the gap between a road and a house, a dwelling, in terms of a wall and somebody sitting the other side of it and a car passing? I don't know the answer to that question, so I'd be interested to know whether there is anything in that wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. There aren't any rules surrounding that particular point. No. We're comparing the new use to the existing use. The fact that there was an existing use as a horse paddocks mean that people and vehicles will have been going up and down that track. I know that it looks grassed at the moment, but there is a drop curb which does show that it must have been used for vehicles in the past. And it's just whether that's a material change or not. And we don't consider that to be a material change. So there's no rules as such as to people going past the gardens.
Thank you. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. It was something to do with what Councillor Cronk said. And you said that the officer said that they would add a construction plan, but there is already one on there. 3. It's a construction and environmental management plan.
Thank you. So condition 3 that's recommended is a construction and environmental plan, which is recommended by Environmental Health. So that would cover a different issue to if we just put.
Oh, it just says environmental management plan. So I assume that it covered both. Okay. Going on to, we all seem to be sort of skating around this and nobody wants to make a decision, but KCC highways are okay with this. Fire and rescue are not a statutory body. So I need somebody to tell me a good reason that and a planning policy reason that we should refuse this.
And before everyone volunteers, Councillor Back, I'm going to go to Councillor Woodgate and then Councillor Pout. Sorry, Councillor Beanie and then Councillor Pout. And then I hope that someone will come back to you on that afterwards. Councillor Woodgate, did you want to say?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to ask, no one has mentioned this, and I didn't see it in the report. This road is very, very busy during school times, as I know from personal experience. And has that been taken into consideration with regards to the building of the school, building of the development at the back? Because there's going to be lots of lorries unloading, and it's going to sort of block the traffic, I think.
Councillor Beanie, did you have a question as well? Because we can.
Sorry, Chair. No, what I was actually going to do, but I don't know if Councillor Back was doing it. I was actually because of the reasons I'm going to give is because obviously due to the fact that though it's going to be difficult and the residents either side are going to suffer 6-7 months of discomfort while it's being built, but unfortunately it can be built. And also because potentially we could see another scheme back on this site for maybe more properties with bike access only with no parking, that I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation for approval. But seconding that, if members would feel fit, we haven't been out for one, and considering the photos don't do this justice, maybe a site visit would potentially help with this application. But you've got your motion from myself anyway, Chair. But
thank you. And before going to Councillor Back, I'm going to go to Councillor Pout.
Thank you, Chair. I think if we're going to accept it, we've probably missed the chance at a site visit. We're just going to point out that the Kent Design Guide for a shared private drive says 2.4 metres is the minimum required. And so on the whole, other than that tiny little pinch point, we're mostly there anyway. And I think your point about it coming back with no access, is very valid. I think we're kind of at the point where it feels a bit naff, doesn't it? But there's no material reasons to reject this. So I would second Councillor Beanie's proposal to accept the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Pout. Councillor Back?
Councillor Pout beat me to it.
Councillor Woodgate, your experience may be greater than mine, but except if it's for sports, particularly when it goes round the corner of St George's Road, except for the parking, I don't see a direct confrontation.
There's it's quite a lot of cars parked there at school kicking out time. Is one point, including myself in days gone by.
Seeing it as a conflict in relation to, say, any construction management plan.
Yeah, I think it would make it more difficult.
Thank you. So the construction management plan, we could include a note that would ensure that deliveries would be made outside of peak timings. So if deliveries are made outside of school hours, then hopefully that would alleviate your concerns on that point.
Just to add a bit further to that, with construction management plan conditions, you can almost stipulate in the condition the kind of things that you're after, obviously to direct the developer or the applicant as to the details you require pursuant to that condition. So as we've advised, that can include sort of advising that we'd want to know details of particular times when they would, or to make sure that deliveries would be outside particular peak times, and that could be in relation to school hours and that sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a proposal before us that's been seconded.
There is a motion to approve the application which has been seconded, and that's with an additional condition for a construction management plan. For clarification, if you wish to approve the application, you should vote for the motion. If you do not wish to approve the application, you should vote against the motion or abstain. And if this motion fails to be carried by a majority of votes, the application will not have been determined and another motion and vote will be required. Can I ask you to cast your votes and for Gemma to start the electronic vote? We have 5 votes for the motion and 5 abstentions. So that means that the motion has been carried and the application has been approved.
Thank you. We are going to go to the next agenda item. And that agenda item relates to application 24/00156, Malvern Meadow in Temple Ewell. I'll hand over to our planning officer.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Firstly, I'd just like to draw members' attention to, I made an omission in the report, and due to the discussion in the previous application, I thought it would be the first thing I should mention. Obviously the application has been in for some time, and one of the concerns which has been raised was about the access. This has been addressed, and I didn't write that in the report. The access has been amended to be 3.7 metres wide, and therefore it is compliant with, although Kent Fire and Rescue isn't a statutory consultee, it does meet the requirements for the fire and rescue access, and an amended plan was submitted in May last year to show this and the fire tracking. So that issue hopefully has been resolved. I'll continue the presentation now. So said access, and then the application site shown with the arrow. So the design is a little bit different, which is quite nice. So it's a semi-subterranean dwelling, which I've set out in the report. And some of the issues were about that the design was a bit different to what Malvern Meadow normally has. But the property next door is of a contemporary design. Again, I've set that out in the report. So I've included these long-range photos to show that there's established development within that area of Temple Ewell already. And I think if that property next door wasn't already there, then we perhaps would be a little bit more resistant. But it would read as an infill. Again, I've set that out in the report. So it would read as an infill of the development rather than anything like encroaching onto the landscape. It's recommended for approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have speakers objecting and speakers supporting, and there's a speaker who is objecting. If I could ask that speaker to come forward, please. Can I ask Ms. Eloise Mitchell, who's speaking in support of the application, please?
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chair, members. My name is Eloise Mitchell. I'm here speaking on behalf of the applicant in support of this application. The officer recommendation is to grant planning permission, and I'd respectfully ask members to support that recommendation. I'll focus on three matters: the principle of development, the quality and sustainability of the design, and the way in which the applicant has responded constructively to the concerns raised during the application process. The site immediately adjoins the boundary of Temple Ewell, and the officer's report confirms that the proposal is acceptable in principle. It's not an isolated dwelling in the open countryside. It's a single dwelling closely related to the existing built form of Malvern Meadow and Malvern Lodge, so clearly supported by policy SP4 of the local plan. Some concern has been raised around the access from an ownership point of view and for fire engines, but to confirm, the applicant owns all of the land, which is the subject of this application, and access to the property is achievable using the applicant's land. Fire engine tracking drawings were provided to the case officer to also confirm that site access is achievable, and access was amended to 3.7 metres wide, so more than suitable for a fire engine. In terms of design, this is an exceptional and genuinely site-specific piece of architecture. The building has been carefully designed around the contours of the land and is partially built into the slope. Its low, curved and semi-subterranean form allows the dwelling to emerge from the landscape rather than dominate it. The green and cedarn roofs, the living walls and extensive landscaping will soften the building and allow it to sit naturally within its surroundings. The sustainability measures are integral to the building. They include high thermal mass, air source heat pumps, PV panels and battery storage, underfloor heating, triple glazing, rainwater harvesting, planted roofs and walls and solar shading to reduce overheating. The semi-subterranean design itself also improves the thermal efficiency of the dwelling. Thirdly, the applicant has listened and responded carefully to the technical concerns that have been raised. The application has been supported by extensive ecological and arboricultural landscape and design work. The Kent Wildlife Trust initially objected, but following further assessment and collaborative work with the applicant's ecological team, it withdrew that objection. It concluded that the proposed mitigation to the local wildlife site, the compensation and enhancement was more than sufficient. The proposal has been positioned where the poorer quality area of habitat is on site, while retaining the more valuable areas and woodland, and includes numerous measures to enhance the site for nature and biodiversity. Members therefore have before them a proposal which is supported in principle by the adopted local plan, has a design of exceptional quality, has substantial sustainability benefits, and whose technical impacts have been satisfactorily addressed. I therefore respectfully ask members to support the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I hand over to Councillor Back to make a contribution, SP4 is an interesting one, and I know in the report A, B and D are required. I was just wondering, am I right in thinking that, for example, G and the buffer is not relevant to this application?
Thank you, Chair. So it's the criteria set out in SP4, all of them must be met to be acceptable. I haven't addressed each one individually because some of them aren't relevant in this instance. So, for example, enhancing any heritage assets, there aren't any in the immediate vicinity. So G is relevant, but there's significant planting on the site. So too many trees for me to even count are proposed on the site, included in the landscape strategy plan. So I feel that's adequately addressed. And then some. So as much as I haven't included that in the report, it's definitely not an issue. And the other parts, HI, JK, they're just not relevant to be specifically mentioned. For example, about the compatible land uses, it's just where they haven't been mentioned, it's just because they're not specifically relevant.
So basically you were ahead of me about G. I take the point. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this does accord with SP4. It's an infill. The land ownership is not a planning consideration. I only say that because it was mentioned in some of the objections. So it's not a consideration. Temple Ewell Parish Council seem to be fairly neutral on this, looking at their comments in the report. Because this is such a large site, a bungalow would look just silly. So in my view, this building fits in very well because of its size. So I move to grant permission.
Thank you, Councillor Nee, then Councillor Knight. Councillor Cronk.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to second Councillor Back's motion. I think I heard and just nod that the 3.7 metre access would allow a fire engine to access the building, and thereby, by logical means, I deduce that you can get heavy plant and machinery up there because that's a very substantial civil engineering project. So that's taken my two main criteria of questioning out. The only other one I've got is that, and I actually think is a really exciting project in terms of what it's trying to achieve. But there is a comment about the solar reflective coatings going on the windows and doors. And given the orientation of the building in particular, is this likely to cause a reflective glare? Will I be driving down the Orkham Valley or up from the Fox and be blinded by light reflecting off the coatings? So I don't know if they just reflect sunlight, but you know the UV rays, or whether it's a mirror effect. I just don't understand them. Thanks.
Sorry, was that the windows? That's as part of the discussions during the process. It was to have a non-reflective coating on the windows, so no blinding as you're driving along the road. You'll be fine.
Thank you, Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Nee beat me to it, so I was going to second, but I'm quite excited by the fact that you was excited that 2.5 is 3.7 in this case. So well brought. But it is a really nice development. I think it's something that really is going to fit in quite well. So it ticks all the boxes for me. So I was going to approve it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cronk.
Thank you, Chairman. Totally something different for me. I'm quite pleased with Kent Wildlife have sorted the things out, because we have quite a bit of live local wildlife can be lost on there, and I'm quite pleased that they've sorted it out and they're going to deal with all that aspect of it all. Like all the others, I agreed it's a good site, but I was quite pleased with that when I read the report and everything that it's got to be sorted out. I did look as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have a proposal seconded.
Yes, there is a motion to approve the application which has been seconded, and that's in accordance with the report recommendation. If you wish to approve the application, you should vote for the motion. If you do not wish to approve the application, you should vote against the motion or abstain. Can I ask members to cast their votes, please? We have 10 votes in favour of the motion, so that motion has been carried and the application has been approved.
Thank you very much. That was our last item on our agenda, so we come to the end of the meeting. I would like to thank everyone, including those online, for attending. I would like to wish a good evening to members, officers, and all those watching the meeting. Please could I ask Democratic Services to end the meeting broadcast and confirm when this has been done.